This slide presentation is entitled Pinpointing Speech Purposes, Types of Speeches, and How to Use Them. We're now going to be moving the class into a different place. In the future, you're not only going to be picking your topics, but also your audiences for your speeches, and then what you want your audiences to achieve. What is the purpose you have for your speech? In order to do this, you need to learn types of speeches and how to use them. The textbook states, human beings speak to others because they want some specific action from their listener. In every instance, we human beings speak to achieve a purpose. We speak because we want to communicate something to someone. So we all speak for a common purpose. Let's look at the purposes of speaking. The three general purposes of a speech are to inform, to persuade, to entertain. Let's look at the speech to inform. When we want to inform our audience, we want to, one, acquire or improve a skill on their ability to do something. 2, learn more about or increase their understanding of a subject they already know something about. 3, to learn something new. So if I were to be giving a speech, say at the Springfield Senior Citizen Center, and I wanted to give them a speech about going on Facebook, I'd be wanting to teach them something new, or I'd want them to increase their understanding about a subject they already know something about. This is the good purpose of an informative speech. Next, we have a persuasion speech, and this is the speech which people do the most, and because of that, it's a very nuanced speech, and it really can have several purposes in and of itself. The first purpose of a persuasion speech is to impress. An example would be commencement speeches, eulogies, or sermons. Have you ever heard the phrase, you're just preaching to the choir? It means you're preaching to someone who already likes you to begin with, and I think that to impress would be a good example of that. The second purpose can be to convince. One example would be you are a member of a panel on whether or not global warming is a serious threat, and your speech represents your view well. You're trying to convince your audience about your views. And finally, there's the purpose, and that's to activate. And an example would be a candidate soliciting votes, a person asking for pledges during a fund drive, a sales manager driving his or her sales force. So if we focus on a candidate, for example, a presidential candidate giving an acceptance speech at a convention is not trying to convince his audience because everyone at the convention is already for that presidential candidate. Rather, they're trying to activate their audience, get the people in the arena to go out and get more votes. So that's the difference between convince and activate, and impress as well. But the one thing that all these have in common is that the desired response from this audience is overt, specific, and measurable action. The final purpose of a speech is to entertain. And simply put, this is a comedic speech. For example, giving a speech about a disastrous state. Now, this might be the most difficult speech to give because you're trying to get your audience to laugh with you. If anybody's ever been to an open mic at a comedy club where amateurs get up there and speak, you know how difficult this can be. But it has worked in my classes. The example I always give is the Laxbro speech. There was a woman in one of my classes who was very quiet and very shy, but she was also a great speaker and very popular in the class. She had a boyfriend who was a lacrosse player at a college in Worcester, and she decided to give a speech about Laxbros, a slang term for guys who play lacrosse. Her audience was the freshman women of that particular college, and the purpose of the speech was to tell women not to date lacrosse players. She talked about what pigs they were, the drinking they did, all the shenanigans they did, and it was just a really funny speech, mostly because everybody was shocked at what was coming out of this woman's mouth. So an entertainment speech can work. Many times I ask my students, I say, what kind of speech is this? Is this an informative speech, a persuasion speech? And they say, well, it's both. So that brings up the question, is there such a thing as a combination speech? In other words, can your speech be both a speech to inform and to persuade? And the answer to that is emphatically no. You need to have one purpose for your speech. This will help you as you select your topic. Now, let me just say this. You might need to inform your audience first about your speech. Say you're speaking before a town meeting, and the issue on the table is banning plastic bags in that town. You might need to inform your audience about the dangers of plastic bags, how it affects our environment and our wildlife before you get to persuade them. But ultimately, your goal is to persuade your audience to ban plastic bags, and that should be the one goal that you should be focused for. So yes, you can inform your audience about your purpose, but keep in mind what your main purpose is. So now we're going to get into speech purposes. A definition of a specific speech purpose. A specific purpose is a statement, a complete statement, saying what you want your speech to achieve. So let's be clear on the difference between a general purpose, what we have just been talking about, and a specific purpose, which we are now discussing. A general purpose is a broad collective expression of the general intent of your speech. Your job is to move from that general intent or idea to writing a specific, exact, precise statement of what your speech is to achieve. There's a very simple criteria for a specific speech purpose. It's 3 points. Number 1, it is worded from the audience's point of view. This makes it a statement of which the audience is to be able to do or think or believe or enjoy after they hear your speech. Your specific speech purpose should be specific. The wording is so clear that if it were feasible, you could actually measure or test your audience after your speech to determine if your speech purpose had been achieved. Number 3, it is attainable. The specific purpose is a realistic, practical goal, one that might actually be achieved by your audience. When you plan your speech, you need to know your audience. Like I said, you will not only be picking your topics for your speeches, you will be picking your audience. What do you need to keep in mind when you speak? The audience's attitude towards the subject. What does your audience think about what you are going to say? Let's get back to the example about the town meeting. If you know that your audience's attitude towards environmental issues might not be where you want them to be, that's fine. You simply need to work your way towards the audience's point of view by talking about things that affect them. You might be worried about the attitude toward yourself, the speaker. What will they think of you? If you're younger, they might think that you don't know what you're talking about. You might want to dress in a more subdued, conservative manner to put yourself more in their terms. What is their occupation? Is it a blue-collar town? Is it a white-collar town? What is the ethnicity? What's the education level? What is the gender? What is the age? If you were to give a speech about the importance of youth using birth control, would you speak to high school seniors? Probably not, because that's something that they're already aware of. Would you speak to 8th graders? Probably, because these are issues that they're just starting to face. Age can be very, very important. But I will say this, when you pick your audience for a speech, please don't write out a high school. Please don't write out a group of motorcycle lovers. You need to be specific. Write out Central High School in Springfield, Massachusetts. That will give you a picture of your audience. Write out the Motorcycle Club of Agawam, Massachusetts. Again, that gives you a picture of your audience. Be specific about your audience. And you need to word your speech purposes from the audience point of view. Think of your audience when you are starting your specific speech purpose statement by using one of these ways. After hearing my speech, the audience will, after listening to me speak, the purpose of my speech is to have my audience. All of these reinforce the idea that your speech is not about you, it is about your audience. Be specific in your goal. When you have strong language, you are specific in the audience's action. Again, we get back to the Senior Citizen Center in Springfield, and the goal is, by the end of my speech, half my audience will sign up with my assistance for a Facebook account. That is worded from the audience's point of view. By the end of my speech, half my audience will. And then there's a specific action. They're going to sign up with my assistance for a Facebook account. It is also attainable because I did not say the whole audience. I'm giving myself a goal of half the audience. I'm not trying for everything. This is using strong, definite language. Do not say, will understand. How will you know if your audience understands by the end of the speech? Do not say, will know. Again, how will you know that they know or will agree? If you give them an action, sign up for a Facebook account, then you'll know that they agreed with you. What I want you to remember is 1, make sure your specific speech purpose always starts from the audience point of view. After hearing my speech, my audience will. The purpose of my speech is to have the audience. The audience will after hearing my speech. Notice that the language is strong and specific. Do not use these terms. Remember, strong, specific, give your audience an action. Do not say, after hearing my speech, my audience will understand why I want to. What does that mean? Do not say, my audience will agree with me to. Having your audience agree with you is fine, but how do you know they did? Give them an action. Have them sign a petition, or be able to say back to you in their own words your reasons. Be specific in your action. A good specific speech purpose has a definite action. That is not to say that your action will achieve that action. That's not to say that your speech will achieve that action. What is important is that you have given yourself and your audience a goal. Make your goal attainable. In other words, make your goal realistic. A well-worded specific speech purpose can be as simple as this. By the end of my speech, the 7th grade class of Holyoke Middle School will be able to state in their own words why I am in favor of drug testing. Why is this effective? Because it is realistic. The audience wants to know that their words were heard by the audience. Think through your purpose. Stick to these rules. All right, so now that we've had a quick overview, we have some examples of specific speech purposes here. Let's analyze them. So let's go through the first one. After hearing my speech, the audience will be able to list 3 reasons for the increasing inflation. So even without knowing who your audience is, I hope you said, yes, this is a correctly written specific speech purpose. The reason for this is that it starts out with the audience point of view. After hearing my speech, the audience will, so it's about the audience. There's a specific action, list 3 reasons. 3 reasons is attainable. If this said, list 20 reasons, then it might not be so attainable, but list 3 reasons for the increasing inflation makes it an attainable goal. So this is a well-written specific speech purpose. Okay, next. My speech will tell the audience how to improve their skills in playing video games. Well, if you look through this, I hope you said no. The first thing this speech purpose does is that it's written from the speaker's point of view. My speech will tell the audience. Well, that's not from the audience's point of view. And then the goal is how to improve their skills in playing video games. That's not specific enough. What video games and what are the skills? But also, is it attainable? Can just talking to an audience improve your video skills? Probably not. So let's throw that one out. And number 3, after hearing my speech, the audience will understand the need for shopping carefully for a new car. This is halfway correct, but if you sent this in to me, I would send it right back. I want you to look at the phrase will understand and just throw that out. What can you substitute for will understand if you want your audience to achieve something? The best way to do it would be to give your audience a goal. There are 3 things you need to look for when you're shopping for a new car. And then change your specific speech purpose around to say, after hearing my speech, the audience will be able to state my 3 things to look for when shopping carefully for a new car. And the last one, after hearing my speech, my listeners, members of a pacifist group, will vote to outlaw guns. Okay, so voting to outlaw guns is a very big deal, and some may say this is very, very unrealistic. But look at the audience, members of a pacifist group. Pacifists are people that are morally opposed to any kind of violence. So is this an unrealistic goal? Well, not for this audience. Is it written from the audience point of view? Yes. After hearing my speech, my listeners, members of a pacifist group, it's identifying that. Does it have a specific action? Yes. Vote to outlaw guns. Now, if this audience were the National Rifle Association, Would this be a realistic goal? Probably not, but this is a good case of the speaker analyzing their audience. A final note. Your statement of your specific speech purpose should be the basis for all of your remaining decisions about the design of your speech. So when you are developing your speeches, you need to ask yourself every time how each statistic, story, or visual is helping you achieve your speech purpose. If you do this, then your research for all your speeches will be cut in half because you are going for a very narrow, specific goal. So for that reason, please make sure you understand this process. You will be tested on it, and your speeches will be graded on it. Always word your speech purpose from the audience viewpoint. Be specific in both your audience and the action they are to take. Always make sure that your speech is not too complicated or high-minded. Give yourself and your audience an opportunity to succeed. And that's the bottom line. We want you to succeed.